Okay, there are a lot of different iPad cases out there, and with all of the options, it can make it kind of difficult to make a decision. There are either cases that are really protective but lack any features, or there's some cases that'll give you a keyboard but only protect one side of the iPad. Luckily, the Logitech Combo Touch actually does both of these things, and it actually does more. The case itself is a fabric material that's pretty soft to the touch, but is still fairly rigid. On the back, there's a kickstand that gives the iPad a large amount of viewing angles. You can use this to prop up your iPad when you're either watching videos or making video calls, but then you can increase the angle of the kickstand so much so that you get a drawing mode. It's a little bit better than having the iPad flat down on the table, as you can have it raised just a little bit so that you can see a little bit better when you're writing or drawing on the iPad. The stand also attaches magnetically, so you get a little bit of like a satisfying click when the stand attaches to the back of the iPad. On the other end, opening the kickstand is actually a little bit more difficult to do by accident in this case because the magnet holds it down pretty well. The case is mostly a bumper around the outside of the iPad. It has a softer touch like a silicone, but then it also has the protective feature of a harder plastic. This goes around all sides of the iPad except for one, and that's where the Apple Pencil goes. There are also cutouts for all of the other features of the iPad. There's cutouts for the speakers, the microphones, the USB-C port, and the camera. The cutout for the USB-C port is a little bit small, so anything that's larger than the stock iPad charger is gonna be a little bit too big in some cases. There's also no cutout for the volume buttons, but this isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can still easily press the volume buttons through the case, but there's also another option if you don't want to do this at all. If you don't want to press the buttons on the side of the iPad, there's actually another option. You can use the keyboard shortcuts that come with the keyboard that comes with this case. There's also a lot of other options that you would typically find on something like a laptop. The Combo Touch keyboard attaches magnetically, and the magnets do a really good job of holding it down. The keyboard is backlit and actually gets decently bright. I should also mention that the Logitech Combo Touch is not to be confused with the Logitech Folio Touch. The one that we're talking about is the Combo Touch, and the keyboard is detachable. The Folio Touch, however, does not have a detachable keyboard and instead folds around on the back. The Combo Touch can actually flip around and have it to where the keys are not exposed on the back. And overall, I would say that this keyboard feels pretty decent given that it's a keyboard for an iPad case. You're definitely still going to get a better typing experience from a dedicated keyboard or a nicer laptop, but you'll probably still be satisfied with this keyboard. I would say that given how thin this part of the case is, there's actually more key travel than I expected. I would say that if you really want to use this in a laptop style, you'll probably also be impressed with the trackpad. There aren't any real dead zones for this trackpad, and the clicking is pretty solid. One thing that also surprised me when looking at the keyboard is just how big the trackpad is. Given how small this keyboard is, I really didn't expect the trackpad to be that big. But Logitech makes use of all the room on this keyboard, so there's a large section at the bottom that's available for a trackpad. Another thing that's pretty cool if you're planning on using this like a laptop is that you have the Face ID. So when you press the spacebar and it sees your face, it'll unlock. And then when you swipe up on the trackpad, you're in. The arrows on this keyboard are in a T-shape, which is something I actually didn't expect to find given how small the keyboard is. It's going to feel slightly more cramped than it would on a larger laptop when you're typing. You're going to notice that the keys are a slight bit smaller and slightly close together. A lot of this has to do with the fact that this case is for the 11-inch iPad Pro. The Combo Touch is available for all iPad models in some variation aside from the iPad Mini. There's a couple different versions of the Combo Touch, so make sure to go on Logitech's website to see if it's compatible with your iPad model before you order it. If you don't want to use the keyboard but you also don't want to leave it someplace, you can flip it around and attach it to the back of the case. This is also done with the use of magnets and makes it so that you can keep the keyboard with you and also not have to have it attached to the front, or having to expose the keys of the keyboard while you're using it as a tablet. Flipping the keyboard around like this also allows for an orientation that isn't exactly supported by Logitech. This mode allows the kickstand to go on top of the keyboard. This is something I think you would use if you want to either do video calls or watch videos on your iPad, but you also don't want to have the keyboard separate or in front of the iPad. This makes the overall footprint of the iPad a little bit smaller, as the kickstand and the keyboard are going in one area, instead of the keyboard going out of the front side and the kickstand going on the back. Even though this case is still incredibly versatile when paired with the iPad, there's still a few downsides. The first major downside is that getting the iPad in and out of the case is kind of tricky. This is beneficial from a protection standpoint, as your iPad really isn't going to slip out of this case by accident. But if you switch between using your iPad with and without a case really often, you're going to find that it's kind of more challenging here. The second thing is that the Apple Pencil in this instance is not covered by any kind of flap, so it's going to be exposed if you have it in in a bag with other items, which may mean that the Apple Pencil gets knocked off. The third is that with the keyboard being backlit on this case, you're going to see a little bit more power draw. This is really going to ultimately depend on your usage, and if you use the keyboard all the time, you may see more power draw than you're used to, but if you really don't have the keyboard attached, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. With all of the different iPad case options out there, I feel that this one is one of the most versatile. You get a lot of different options when it comes to either using this as a tablet or some kind of laptop replacement, and you can have different combinations to achieve different things. I'm pretty confident that this can do almost anything that you would need from an iPad, but I am still curious if there's some use cases that I haven't thought of. If there's a use case that you use for your iPad that relates to this case or not, leave me a comment, as I'm really curious how you use your iPad, or if you even use an iPad at all. If you're going to use an iPad for school, you should probably check out this video, and if not, you should probably check out the rest of my channel, as there's a bunch of tech videos and you might just like some of them.